Ukrainian tanks move into Mariupol after Russian forces came ashore in the port city, February 24. Reuters. Carlos Faria. People wait in a traffic jam as they leave the city of Kharkiv, February 24. Reuters. Antonio Bronick. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb the body of a soldier, without insignia, who the Ukrainian military claimed is a Russian army serviceman killed in fighting, lies on a road outside the city of Kharkiv, Ukraine, February 24. Reuters. Maxim Levin. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A view shows the body of a school employee, who according to locals was killed by shelling, in the separatist-controlled town of Gorlovka in the Donetsk region, Ukraine, February 25. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Servicemen of the Ukrainian National Guard take positions in central Kyiv as Russian forces advance toward the capital, February 25. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Smoke and flames rise over during the shelling near Kyiv, February 26. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. People take cover as an air raid siren sounds near an apartment building damaged by recent shelling in Kyiv, February 26. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Ukrainian servicemen walk by a damaged vehicle at the site of fighting with Russian troops in Kyiv, February 26. Reuters. Valentin Ogirenko. An armed local resident carries a cat in a carrier and a fish in an aquarium, which he took out of an apartment building damaged by shelling in Kyiv, February 26. Reuters. Mikhail Polinchak. Local residents prepare Molotov cocktails to defend the city, in Uzhhorod, Ukraine, February 27. Reuters. Serhiy Hudak. A woman fleeing a Russian invasion hugs a child at a temporary camp in Przemysl, Poland, February 28. Reuters. Yara Nardi. A refugee child fleeing from Ukraine gestures while waiting for transport at Nyugati station, in Budapest, Hungary, February 28. Reuters. Martin Monews. A view shows the area near the regional administration building, which city officials said was hit by a missile attack, in central Kharkiv, Ukraine, March 1. Reuters. Vyacheslav Madiayevsky. A blast is seen in the TV tower in Kyiv, March 1. Reuters. Carlos Faria. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky poses after an interview with Reuters in Kyiv, March 1. Reuters. Umit Bektis. A civilian trains to throw Molotov cocktails to defend the city, in Zhytomyr, Ukraine, March 1. Reuters. Vyacheslav Ratinsky. An aerial view shows a residential building destroyed by shelling in the settlement of Borodyanka in the Kyiv region, March 3. Reuters. Maxim Levin. Children look out from an evacuation train from Kyiv to Lviv as they say goodbye to their father at Kyiv Central train station in central Kyiv, Ukraine, March 3. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. Destroyed Russian military vehicles are seen on a street in the settlement of Borodyanka, in the Kyiv region, March 3. Reuters. Maxim Levin. A Ukrainian service member walks near a school building destroyed by shelling in Zhytomyr, Ukraine, March 4. Reuters. Vyacheslav Ratinsky. Local residents escape from the town of Irpin, after heavy shelling landed on the only escape route used by locals, in Irpin, near Kyiv, March 6. Reuters. Carlos Faria. Local residents look for cover as they escape from the town of Irpin, after heavy shelling on the only escape route used by locals, while Russian troops advance towards the capital of Kyiv. In Irpin, near Kyiv, Ukraine, March 6. Reuters. Carlos Barria. A man helps an elderly woman to run for cover after heavy shelling on the only escape route used by locals. In Irpin, near Kyiv, March 6. Reuters. Carlos Barria. People fleeing advancing Russian forces filed across wooden planks crossing Irpin River below a destroyed bridge, outside Kyiv, March 9. Reuters. Thomas Peter. A member of the Honor Guard holds a portrait of a member of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, Valery, who was killed during Russia's invasion of Ukraine, during a funeral ceremony in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 8. Reuters. Valentin Ogerenko. A police officer says goodbye to his son as his family flees from advancing Russian troops in the town of Irpin outside Kyiv, Ukraine, March 8. Reuters. Thomas Peter. Refugees evacuated on a train from Kyiv wait for transfer to Poland outside the train station in Lviv, Ukraine, March 7. Reuters. Kai Pfaffenbach. Oleksiy Beregovy, a musician of the Kyiv Classic Symphony Orchestra, performs for journalists and people after an open-air concert named Free Sky at the Independence Square in central Kyiv, March 9. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Olga hugs her boyfriend Vladimir as they say goodbye prior to Volodymyr's deployment closer to the front line, at the train station in Lviv, Ukraine, March 9. Reuters. Kai Pfaffenbach. Ukrainian soldiers walk past a monument of the city founder Duke de Richelieu, covered with sandbags for protection, in Odessa, Ukraine, March 10. Reuters. Alexandros Avramidis. A Ukrainian soldier hides from a helicopter airstrike near Demidov, Ukraine, March 10. Reuters. Maxim Levin. Civilians who volunteered to join the Territorial Defense Forces train on weapons in Odessa, Ukraine, March 11. Reuters. Alexandros Avramidis. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb people. Carry white flags as they cross the border between Bucha and Irpin next to a body lying on the street, in Irpin, Ukraine, March 11. Reuters. Serhiy Nuznenko. A woman reacts in front of a residential building which was damaged in the separatist-controlled town of Volnovakha in the Donetsk region, Ukraine, March 11. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Ukrainian servicemen carry a dead body on stretcher in the town of Irpin outside Kyiv, Ukraine, March 12. Reuters. Marko Urica. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb people, and medics help a wounded resident of a house destroyed by shelling in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 14. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. A fragment of a missile is seen in the street after shelling in the separatist-controlled city of Donetsk, Ukraine, March 14. Reuters. Stringer. Tracers are seen in the night sky as Ukrainian servicemen fire on a drone in Kyiv, March 14. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. A woman walks with a bicycle next to a building damaged in the separatist-controlled town of Volnovakha in the Donetsk region, Ukraine, March 15. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. A man mourns next to the body of his mother, who was killed when an intercepted missile hit a residential building, in Kyiv, March 17. Reuters. Thomas Peter. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky presents flowers to Katerina Vlasenko, a 16-year-old girl who was injured as she fled with her family from the town of Oryzl, at a hospital in Kyiv. March 17. Ukrainian Presidential Press Service via Reuters. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb the body of a person killed lies on the ground in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 18. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Bogdan, a wounded man who says he was injured from shelling, smokes in front of a hospital in the town of Brovary, near Kyiv, March 19. Reuters. Marko Urica. Tetiana Chornoval, a former member of the Ukrainian parliament, now a service member and operator of an anti-tank guided missile weapon system, pulls an anti-tank missile out of a car at a position on the front line, in the Kyiv region, March 20. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Local residents walked near residential buildings which were damaged in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 18. Reuters. Stringer. Igor, 5, comforts his mother Helen Yukubets, who cries in a ballroom, which has been converted to a temporary shelter, at the Mandici Hotel after fleeing from Chernihiv in Ukraine to Romania, at the border crossing in Sasieva, Romania, March 20. Her 18-year-old son and husband remain in Ukraine to fight. Reuters. Clodagh Kilcoyne. Firefighters work at the site of a bombing at a shopping center in Kyiv, March 21. Reuters. Marko Urica. Olena, the mother of Denis Snihor, 25, a border guard turned soldier, killed by Russian shelling in the northern town of Ovruk, mourns her son during his funeral at the Lykakov Cemetery, in Lviv, Ukraine, March 21. Reuters. Zora Ben-Semra. Members of the Ukrainian Territorial Defense Forces check a man as they patrol during a curfew in Kyiv, March 22. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Children play in front of a building damaged in fighting in the besieged southern port of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 23. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. A firefighter works at a residential district that was damaged by shelling in Kyiv, Ukraine, March 23. Reuters. Marko Urica. Family members of 96-year-old Holocaust survivor Boris Romanchenko attend his funeral in Kharkiv, Ukraine, March 24. Romanchenko was killed at his apartment by shelling. Reuters. Thomas Peter. Local residents sit on a bench near an apartment building destroyed in the besieged southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 25. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. A man walks past a fire after a shelling in Kharkiv, Ukraine, March 25. Reuters. Oleg Pereverzev. People watch as smoke rises after an airstrike in Lviv, Ukraine, March 26. Reuters. Pavlo Palamarchuk. A destroyed Russian T-72 tank is seen near a damaged memorial to fallen WWII soldiers, in the village of Lyudyanivka, recently liberated by Ukrainian armed forces, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, March 27. Reuters. Serhiy Nuznenko. A woman with dogs walks next to a destroyed bridge during evacuation from the urban town, outside of Kyiv, Ukraine, March 28. Reuters. Alexander Ratushniak. Curtains flutter in the wind at a building that was damaged by shelling in a neighborhood that has been largely abandoned and left without water, gas and heating, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, March 28. Reuters. Thomas Peter. A Ukrainian serviceman hugs his mother Larissa Kolesnik, 82, after she was evacuated from urban town, on the outskirts of Kyiv, Ukraine, March 30. Reuters. Zora Ben-Semra. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb a service member of pro-Russian troops. Sits next to a body of a serviceman killed in fighting in the city of Mariupol, Ukraine, March 31st. Reuters. Chingiz Khandarov. Ukrainian servicemen pose for a picture near a destroyed bridge in the town of Irpin outside Kyiv, April 1st. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Local residents ride bicycles past flattened civilian cars on a street in the town of Bucha, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 1st. Reuters. Alexander Ratushniak. A soldier takes a photograph of his comrade as he poses beside a destroyed Russian tank and armored vehicles, in Bucha, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 2nd. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb a body of a civilian, who according to residents was killed by Russian army soldiers and then buried along with others in one grave, is seen in Bucha, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 2nd. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. A kettle is placed on the stove inside a destroyed house in the village of Kozaroviki, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 2nd. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. An Orthodox church is seen in front of an oil refinery which caught fire following a missile attack near the port city of Odessa, in Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Nacho Dos. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb a body with hands bound by white cloth, who according to residents was shot by Russian soldiers, lies on the street in Bucha, Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. A Ukrainian service member walks in the front of the Antonov An-225 Mriya cargo plane, the world's biggest aircraft, destroyed by Russian troops, at an airfield in the settlement of Hostomel, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Gleb Garanich. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb a dog lays next to the body of a civilian, who according to residents was killed by Russian soldiers, in Bucha, in Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Stringer. A view shows buildings damaged in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Stringer. Marat and Renat Bondrenko stand in the living room of their neighbor's house, which was hit by a projectile during an aerial bombardment, in the village of Yakovlivka outside Kharkiv, Ukraine, April 3rd. War is when bad people shoot, when they blow everything up and kill good people, and good soldiers make sure that we can sleep at night, Marat said. Reuters. Thomas Peter. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb bodies of people, who according to residents were shot by Russian soldiers, lie in the street in Bucha, Ukraine, April 3rd. Reuters. Mikhail Polinchak. Local residents walk along a street next to a building damaged in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 3rd. The sign on the vehicle reads, "Children." Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Local resident Victoria Mukina, 33, plants tulips with her daughter Miroslava near an apartment building damaged in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 4th. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb Serhiy Lohovsky, 26, mourns by the body of his friend Ihor Litvinenko, who according to residents was killed by Russian soldiers, after they found him beside a building's basement, in Bucha, Ukraine, April 5th. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. A woman carries her cat as she walks past buildings that were destroyed by Russian shelling in Borodianka, in the Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 5th. Reuters. Zora Ben Semra. A cleanup worker walks past buildings that were destroyed by shelling in Borodianka, in the Kyiv region, Ukraine, April 7th. Reuters. Marko Urica. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb a view of people's belongings and bloodstains on the ground after a missile strike on a railway station in Kramatorsk, Ukraine, April 8. Ministry of Defense Ukraine via Reuters. A couple hugs while walking past a building that was heavily damaged by shelling in Kharkiv, Ukraine, April 10. Reuters. Alkis Konstantinidis. Graves of civilians killed during Ukraine-Russia conflict are seen next to apartment buildings in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 10. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. A young man eats inside a subway car, as residents find shelter from shelling in a metro station, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, April 11. Reuters. Alkis Konstantinidis. An armored vehicle of pro-Russian troops is seen in the street in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 11. Reuters. Chingis Khandarov. A woman reacts as she hugs another woman outside a heavily damaged apartment block, following an artillery attack, in Kharkiv, Ukraine, April 13. Reuters. Alkis Konstantinidis. A view shows a torn flag of Ukraine hung on a wire in front an apartment building in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 14. Reuters. Alexander Ermoshenko. Sensitive material. This image may offend or disturb. Yana Bachek is consoled by her partner Yevgeny Vlasenko and her mother Lyubov Gubareva, as she mourns over the body of her father Viktor Gubarev, 79, killed by shelling in Kharkiv, Ukraine, April 18. Reuters. Alkis Konstantinidis. A local resident, Mykola, 70, climbs down with a stepladder from a bridge destroyed during Russia's invasion in the village of Kukhari in Kiev region, Ukraine, April 19. Reuters. Vladislav Muzhienko. Service members of pro-Russian troops, including fighters of the Chechen Special Forces unit, stand in front of the destroyed administration building of the Azovstal Iron and Steel Works in the southern port city of Mariupol, Ukraine, April 21. Reuters. Chingis Khandarov. An Orthodox priest Alexander conducts the Orthodox Easter service next to the Nativity of the Holy Virgin Church damaged by shelling in the village of Peremogha, in Kiev region, Ukraine, April 24. Reuters. Vladislav Muzhienko. Military chaplains Maxim and Alexandra conduct an Orthodox Easter service for Ukrainian servicemen at their position in Kharkiv region, Ukraine, April 24. Reuters. Serhiy Nuznenko.